Hello crochet friends, Meladora here. I just finished a warm blanket for winter, and you know how it feels when you get done with an afghan. You're itching to get started on the next one. Since winter is slowly making its way out the door, I decided that now that it's starting to get a little bit warmer, that my next afghan should reflect that, either with a thinner stitch or maybe granny squares or something. So I just got on Pinterest and Facebook and everywhere that I usually look around trying to find the perfect stitch for my next project. And while I was doing that, I realized that I've been down this path before. And what I did in the past is actually got creative and I made my own stitches through experimentation. And I thought, there's probably a lot of people out there that's never even heard of these stitches. So now that I've made several throughout the years, I thought I would make this compilation video to share those with you. Now, some of the ones on this list I didn't create myself, but I thought they were unique and I thought you would still enjoy having them as part of this compilation. So next time that you go looking for that perfect stitch, that maybe this video will help you. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps me out a lot. So the first stitch I want to share with you is called the butterfly stitch. When I first posted a video back in July 3rd, 2012, someone commented down below that the spaces that the stitch left, so with the open little spaces in between, look like little butterflies. And I thought that is so cool. So I decided I would name this stitch the butterfly stitch. And I really like how it has like a triangle shape to it, and the triangles look puffy. So I always thought it looked cloud-like. It's kind of a thick stitch, even though it has the holes in it, but it's not too thick, not too thin. So it's that perfect stitch if you're looking for an in-between stitch. The single crochet and double crochet link stitches. Now this one wasn't my original idea, though I sure did put in the work to make this happen. One day I was searching on Pinterest for crochet ideas and I saw this picture of the stitch, and it was only the picture. There was no connection, no link or anything like that. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. You could link crochet like this. After searching for a while and coming up empty, I decided to just experiment for myself. It took some time before I found something that both worked and looked good. And it's not the easiest method, and I would never want to make a big project using it, but it looks amazing enough to make a scarf or some small project from it. I experimented using both single crochets and double crochets, and it's hard to pick which one I like more, though the double crochet tutorial seems to get a lot more attention. So what do you think? Which one is your favorite? The jagged crochet stitch. Now this next stitch is one that I created myself. I've used it to make hats, a water bottle holder, scrap yarn afghan, and a poncho for my husband. It's a great stitch to use up scrap yarn. The only issue I had with this stitch was right at the beginning when I created it and I was going row by row. I wanted to make a whole blanket out of it. And no matter what I did, I'd mark the last stitch. I tried my best to make sure my tension was right, and nothing helped. It would always be lopsided on one side. So I thought, well, maybe it's just the stitch's nature to pull because of the way that it's created. And I thought, well, maybe I can stabilize it with the double crochets after a few rows to see if that would even out. And it worked. So I grabbed a bunch of scrap yarn and I decided I would use a main color for my stabilizing row. And I started making a scrap yarn afghan. And it came out awesome. And I decided not to make the scrap yarn afghan like the typical looking, but to make it more like a rainbow. So I organized all my scrap yarn out, and this is how it turned out. I did the same when I made the poncho for my husband, only instead of using white as a stabilizing row, I used black. This stitch is not a thin stitch, and it's not a thick stitch. It's another one of those medium warm stitches, if that's what you're looking for. The Gothic crochet stitch. This next stitch was made by another yarn artist who creates her own stitches. Her Instagram is astra.libadiva2019. And if you're a fan of lacy, unique stitches, I recommend you go check out her channel. And if you see anything that you'd like me to ask her if I can do another tutorial on, please let me know. I'm big on asking the designer because I design my own stuff as well, and it always pains me to see someone take and redo one of my stitches without at least even asking me first. Even though they don't have to for a crochet stitch, it still feels a little like thievery when they don't. This stitch she made is unique in the way that she uses the placement of her stitches. It gives this really awesome effect. If you're looking for something new you've never done before, then I recommend giving it a try. You can find the tutorials for all these stitches in this video in the description box below. The Glover stitch. This stitch I created when the crocheting world was really getting into bulky yarn. I noticed a lot of people kept asking the question, what do I do with bulky yarn? So I thought this would be a really good opportunity to make a pattern with bulky yarn. But when I went to search for different ideas of stuff that other people have made, mostly all I saw was just single crochets. So I thought, okay, so maybe I should just make my own stitch. But because it's bulky yarn, I knew I was going to need to make it simple, where you could easily find the stitches the next row and that you could pull your hook through the bulky yarn. So it couldn't be anything too tight. It had to be loose. So I thought maybe like a cluster style stitch. It took some time, but I was finally successful. It had the texture I was looking for, and it was easy to do, and it looked great even with worsted weight yarn. I had bought 2 different colors, one solid and a variegated color that looked good with that solid color. And I made the bulky Glover stitch baby blanket. I named it the Glover stitch because it just like kind of popped into my head, kind of like my channel name Meladora did. I just liked the sound of it, and it was simple to remember. I never got around to designing a way to reduce with it. When I made hats, I just switched to single crochets to reduce. This stitch is a medium warm stitch, and it's very easy to pick up on, and it has a different look if you pivot your piece around to the other side, just turn it around. It actually has a different look. It's really cool. I really like this stitch. It's one of my favorites. I hope you like it too. The raspberry stitch for crochet. So this next stitch was the second stitch I ever designed, and I posted the video November 13th, 2012. I was introduced to a stitch called the seed stitch, and when I saw that and saw that it was just single crochet and double crochet alternated, I thought that's so cool how you can use 2 basic stitches and make a piece of crochet that looked completely different. So it got me thinking, and I thought, well, what if you put them together in the same stitch? And I did find something that worked. At the time, like you saw with my butterfly stitch, I was getting really into hats. I was working this stitch in the round. And as I was making a hat, I realized it was kind of tight. So I put both my hands in it to stretch it out to see how much give that the hat had. And I realized it was bumpy on the inside. And so I turned the hat inside out and saw this beautiful texture. Oh my God, if you could have saw my face, my eyes were probably bugging out my head. But the texture was so amazing. And I got online and I tried to see if there was any other crochet stitch like this. And the only thing that I could see was a knitted stitch called the raspberry stitch. And I decided to name it like the knitted stitch, but I called it the raspberry stitch for crochet. This is a warm stitch. But like I said before, it can be a little tight. It doesn't have as much give as a regular hat would that you would make with single crochet or double crochets. So I recommend if you make a hat out of this that you just make it like one size bigger. Also keep in mind that the raspberries only shows up on the back of the stitch. So whatever you make will have to be in the round, or you can get creative and use it row by row in another way, which I did, and I will show you that stitch in this video as well. It's a combination of a couple stitches. So stay tuned for that. The angel stitch. Now I know some of you may look at this stitch and say, huh? That don't look like no angel. But at the time, the bottom looked to me like a little dress and the top kind of looked like a halo. Like I said, naming these stitches aren't easy, so give me a break. So this stitch was another one of those that I saw pictures with no link attached. There were 2 pictures. One showed the first part of the stitch and the second one showed the top part of the stitch. Again, I was blown away. The fact that you could build onto a stitch before going to the next row, basically making 2 rows of crochet at the same time, was a new concept, which took me some time to figure out what I was looking at so that I could recreate it. I finally got something that worked, though later I did change it again to make it a little easier to do. Raspberry Angel Baby Crochet Afghan. Now this is the stitch I referred to at the end of my raspberry stitch section of the video. This takes a combination of my raspberry stitch for crochet and the angel stitch to create a whole new stitch and look. For a long time I wanted to make something in rows with the raspberry stitch that would still keep that bumpy look, and I'd failed time and time again. I was so grateful to God for letting me figure this one out. Given that the angel stitch is a 2-tier stitch, I started the angel stitch as normal, but on the second tier of the stitch, I did the raspberry stitch. It was so simple and looked awesome. It's one of those stitches that look complicated, but it really isn't. I'll take you step by step in my tutorial for this afghan. I really hope you'll give it a try. The starfish stitch. Now this last stitch was the third stitch that I ever created. I was in my making the shell stitch phase, but it was a flat stitch. And as you know by now how much I love texture, so I thought to myself, how can I add texture to this stitch? Making the front and the back posts seemed the easiest answer since I was working with double crochets. So I gave it a try, and it worked better than I thought it would. I did it for several rows and then decided to make a scarf using it. Once I had done a scarf and took a picture, I noticed that 2 rows of this stitch kind of looked like a starfish. And since nothing else came to me as a name by the time I went to make my tutorial for this stitch, I just went with the stitch starfish stitch. Now the blanket I showed you at the beginning of the video was made using this stitch. At the time, my mile a minute blanket was doing well. And I thought, well, maybe the mile a minute afghans are starting to take off again. So I thought, how can I make this stitch that style and still use up scrap yarn? So I made these thicker strips, changing my colors after 6 rows of the stitch with single crochets bordering each side. When I changed colors with each strip, I would stagger the color from the previous strip to give it a diagonal look. Because I was using scrap yarn, every time I would run out of a color, I would just find a color that was similar to that to replace it and keep going. It was pretty easy. And when all my strips were done, I used single crochets to sew my pieces together. This method of sewing is nice because it gives you another way to add color, and it's a very strong hold that is not coming loose. Not to mention, it's as easy as crocheting a row of single crochets, so no needles needed. Well guys, that's it for now. I do have a few more to share, but I didn't want to make this video too long. I hope that this has inspired you in many ways, and I just want to say in closing to please support the crocheters out there that are pushing the envelope to create new ways to crochet so that we can keep being inspired to create. I hope this has inspired you in many ways. With the age of AI coming and starting to design crochet patterns, I fear the problem will only get worse than it is right now, with the same things being taught over and over again with no real creativity. So if you find a designer that you like, be sure to support them. And thank you to everyone who supported me over the years, and I hope to always be able to share my crochet with you. Be well and God bless.